All right. Hi, Alex T. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, can you give us a quick overview of your role in the environment you're responsible for securing?
Sure. I work in kind of a mixed environment. It's a mixed role, I might add. I work across between developers as a CTO and Chief Information Security Officer or CISO at a parent company. And the environment is AWS and Azure, and it's a mix of different programming languages and technical stacks.
Okay. So, our opening question will be, once in your environment, once a vulnerability or exposure is identified, in your experience, what's been the biggest bottleneck, for remediation, and how do you work through that?
I think it depends on the application. So sometimes you find vulnerabilities in older applications that are more difficult to patch and resolve. So usually
Mhm.
those take a back seat, because they're older. So you have to find compensating controls, things that you can put in place that prevent that application from being as vulnerable, even though you can't necessarily fix it. Recently I took it up kind of upon myself. I took a project that was probably hasn't been updated in like 10 years. And, with the help of AI, helped kind of modernize it and turn it into a more, secure, more user-friendly application, if you will, because like it wasn't even mobile friendly. I made it mobile friendly. So, so stuff like
That's definitely
that.
important in modern modern use.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it really depends on the risk level of the application and the criticality of the application. So I think if, like I've never heard anybody say that, if we find a major vulnerability in software that's publicly facing that contains, PII or personally identifiable information, that it wouldn't get fixed right away. Like people will
Mhm.
drop stuff to go fix that if it's identified. But if it's a lesser used application, it's been around forever, the source code might be missing, or, like we don't know what'll happen if we update this thing. Yeah, you need to find compensating controls.
Okay, got it. So you said you worked between with a lot of developers in your role. So typically, where do developers push back most on security, and how do you work with them to integrate it into your processes properly?
Well, it's funny because, well, in part, I work with developers that work for a security company.
Oh,
So
okay.
they would
They
never
build
push
with you.
back. Like
Okay.
the team I work with is very much security first approach. So like
Mhm.
everything is maybe overly secured to some degree. The other team that I work with also really not the developers that push back. It's more a pushback from the business side because
Mhm.
some of the chores and things that we have to do will add time to how quickly a developer can turn something around. So it all boils down to creating a process around things. Change management, for example, is a big deal, right? And making sure that everybody follows that. And nobody really has a problem in following it. But to explain to a business user that, before it used to be a shoulder tap and 10 minutes later it was done and pushed to production and everything was great. Now that's like, a 2 hour or 3 hour thing, maybe a day thing.
Yeah.
And that's really the challenge. So I can't really say that any of the developers that I've worked with push back. It's more, like the business side,
Yeah.
understanding that, hey, like these processes are in place now. This is how we do it. Yes, it's slower, but this is why we do it.
Okay, so speaking of the business side, how do you properly communicate, cyber risk to the business, the non-technical leadership? What are some of the strategies you might use to, get their buy-in?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that can be done. I employ sort of a little bit of everything. So part of that is education. So you have to kind of get in front of them every now and then and talk about risks and talk about what could happen and why it's important to deal with it. The other big thing is something like risk management. So you implement a risk register and you ask everybody at the company, like, hey, if you know something is risky, like, let's talk about it. So people bring you actual risks, things around like, privacy laws and, like somebody leaves the back door open for the, going out to smoke and that shouldn't be, that's fire alarm door,
Right.
like all kinds of stuff like that. And so when you register those, you make people accountable. So like who's working on this, you assign somebody. And so it becomes more of a, we're all in it together as opposed to
Right.
like security is responsible for it. So if they drop the ball, like if I don't know something exists, I can't possibly resolve it. So I have to rely on everybody else to tell me what those things are. And a lot of the times I can recommend things that they can implement, but they're in a better place to do the implementation, and they're also in a better place to say, yeah, that'll work, or no, we need to find something else because of, X, Y, and Z.
Okay. So, what is, in your experience, what's been the biggest change you've made or seen implemented that's actually reduced risk in a measurable way?
Uh, I guess there's a couple of things. So I started as a CTO at a cybersecurity company, and later we were purchased.
Mhm.
But at the cybersecurity company, we said to help us land, we also do like we do training as well as
Mhm.
penetration testing. And so to help us get larger penetration testing customers, I said, why don't we do a SOC 2 audit? And all of a sudden
Mhm.
that brought all of these different controls and rules and things that we should do at the organization, and we did very
Right.
well. And so now I'm kind of doing the same thing at the parent company level. So we're implementing a SOC 2 audit, and we're looking at that framework as a guide for better security.
Mhm.
Risk management and talking about security in general definitely helps as well. So it's again and education. So again, it's all of those things that help improve your posture, and it's little things that make the biggest difference. So for example, we were on one of these risk management calls and we identified something, and 2 days later it was fixed, and it was like this whole risky situation turned into a very kind of positive experience in a very short amount of time. But prior to that, nobody even knew it existed, like, maybe two or three people.
Right.
So sometimes people need that outlet to let you know that, hey, this is happening. So those I think are the biggest drivers.
Okay. Speaking of SOC 2, I know that's something that's critical. It's something we're currently going through, so I'm well aware of the what you're talking about. It's definitely something that you have to have sell to bigger companies. So does that help with having those conversations, back to an earlier question, with those business stakeholders, the non-technical leadership, using a framework like that to get buy-in for cybersecurity programs and things of that nature?
It's from a business perspective, it's explaining SOC 2 and all of the different controls that go with it doesn't really help, right?
Okay.
It's more about framing it as, if you have this report and the report doesn't have any exceptions on it,
Mhm.
then you are likely to close bigger
Right. Yeah.
contracts, especially if you share data, with
Mhm.
those companies, because everybody has vendor management these days, and as you go through that process, if you don't
Mhm.
have that report today, it's 2026, it's kind of like, well, now I have to do all these things. Somebody has to send this person a SIG, we have to collect
Mhm.
all these answers, we have to get and analyze all this, see if their posture is any good. Whereas you have a third party report, that kind of shows you're not afraid of security, right? You had
Mhm.
a third party come in, evaluate you, and write this report. And so by having it, um, I think a lot of CISOs, a lot of security professionals are more comfortable in working with organizations that have it rather than don't have it.
Right. We've definitely experienced that. It's definitely can be a bottleneck if you don't.
Yeah.
So, working for a cybersecurity company, both as a CISO and just in kind of as a vendor, what have you seen that separates the vendors that you trust or has caused other companies to maybe trust your company as opposed to vendors that you don't trust? What are some
Yeah.
of those biggest,
So it's exactly that, right? I have a vendor that I said, well, send me your SOC 2 report, and they're like, we don't have one. I'm like, all right, fill out this SIG, and it's been like 6 weeks, and I haven't gotten it back. So to me, that's like a red flag. Like,
yeah,
they're
clearly not a big priority for them.
yeah, it's not a priority, and it's kind of like, well, that seems to me like it's a risky vendor to work with. And
Right.
it's kind of how we approach it as well, and how we're approached. We are asked to fill out a lot of SIGs, even if we do have a SOC 2 report. And so it's important to have those answers, and it's important to. I personally love filling out the SIGs, and the reason being is because it lets me think about the environment that I'm in and how am I doing the right thing? So, I mean, I can kind of spot areas where I'm lacking if certain questions come up and I'm like, gee, I can't really answer this one, or the answer I'm about to provide isn't the greatest answer. Like I know I have some work there. And I don't think anybody's really looking for perfection either, but generally they
Right.
want to know that you have a, good security posture.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I guess good next question. Is there a decision that you can think back on that you've made in your role that you might approach differently today?
In development or security?
Either or,
Either
whatever
or.
comes to mind.
Well, I'm a software developer at heart, right? I've been a
Mhm.
software developer for, I think I established yesterday, something like 36 years. And the struggle there is build versus buy. And so
Mhm.
there's definitely been a couple of situations where I said, oh no, we're building this. Like, we
Mhm.
want to own it. It's the greatest thing to work on. And then it turns into, like that classic never
Nightmare
ending
project.
project that you didn't think through ahead of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely those types of scenarios. I can't say on the security side, I've had stuff like that. Um, in fact, I can't think of any instance where I ran a project or did something and it didn't work somehow to my benefit on the security side. But on the development side, those are things that I would, and now in hindsight, and I learned my lesson. So now I kind of evaluate these things and really think them through before saying I'm going to build it. So or force a team to build it. So
Right. Yeah.
that's better project management and better understanding of the requirements and what it'll actually take to pull them off.
Okay. Excellent. So I think that's kind of all the categories that I had listed. So as a final closing question, if you joined a new cybersecurity company tomorrow, what's the first thing you would focus on?
So when you say join a new cybersecurity firm, so what as who? What's my
As your
role?
current role.
Oh, as my current role.
Yes.
Join a cybersecurity firm or any firm?
Cybersecurity specifically, but if you have a general
Okay.
overview, we can do that
So
too.
as a CISO, if I'm joining a different cybersecurity firm, I would definitely, but the first thing I would, look to see what their how they're doing things and where I think are gaps. So usually a good place to start is with something like a risk assessment. So just kind of evaluating all the different areas and the different problems and the different systems that they have, and getting yourself in front of people and introducing yourself and talking about security and making sure that all of the stakeholders understand that you're kind of a partner, not somebody who's going to step in their way. Because
Mhm.
really, you want collaboration. You want people to reach out to you and say, "Hey, I'm doing this. Is this okay?" So you want that. We didn't touch on AI at all, but that would be another area that I'd look at. How is this company using AI? Does it have
Mhm.
access to personally identifiable information? Is it only a corporate account, or do employees use personal accounts? Like what kind of trouble could that be? Is anything blocked there? Like that should be, is there a good AI policy? Because a lot of places are starting out like you don't know what to do with AI, so they don't have policies in place yet to
Right.
deal with it.
So since you brought up AI, I forgot to touch on that. Is there anything, what's your, general view on that? What's a good place to start with working in an AI governance policy? Where do you see companies going wrong?
I'm not sure where companies are going wrong yet. I think one of the issues is that, AI right now is so prevalent and so easy to work with. I think it leads to a couple of problems. On the IT side, it's going to lead to like shadow IT. So this
Right.
is like, where years ago we used to complain about people and their Excel macros. Somebody in the business is smart with Excel. They write this incredible macro that does all these 50 things. That person leaves the company. People still use the macro until one day the macro breaks, right? And
Right.
then all of a sudden it shows up on IT's plate, and like none of us knew that it existed. And so now everybody's upset that this was, even part of a
Right.
process. So AI is going to lead to a lot of those types of macros, right? And I'm not saying they're macros, like now they're applications, they're full blown,
Mhm.
things. And the other thing is, using personal accounts for corporate work. Like I think right now I don't think anybody's really blocking, like Claude or ChatGPT. I'm sure some companies are, but a lot of
Right.
companies are not. So I think it's important to establish like a acceptable use policy for AI and make sure that employees know where to go to get an account, who the approved vendors are, and that those vendors run under an enterprise account that doesn't train the models on the data that you provide. So I think those are key things. So that's what I would recommend every company do at this point.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Thank you very much for joining us, Alexander. Hope you have a good
You're
rest of
very
your day.
welcome. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right.